Okay, thank you, everyone. Welcome to the second scoping session for the Hudson Valley project. Again, welcome members of the public and the board and the town board and anyone who is here from Milan. I'm not sure, but if you are, thank you for coming. Again, I'd like to thank the school district for letting us use this wonderful renovated auditorium. And I want to introduce, first of all, people up here on the dais. I'm Michael Stabile. I'm the chairman of the planning board. Over here we have Ethan DiMaria and Vicky Sirocco, who are also members of the planning board. This is Warren Raplansky. He's the town attorney, and Frank Fish from our planners, BFJ. Obviously, this is the second of the two sessions and last. I want to point out that as well as speaking here today, you can submit written comments that it can be submitted by email or mail as per the addresses that it's on the handout you should have been able to get at the front desk. Additionally, you may hand in a paper copy of any comments today to Tricia Devine, who is at the sign-in desk, and they will be added to the record. The deadline for written comments is August 10th, 2021 at 4 p.m. First off, this is a scoping session, and Frank Fish, who from BFJ, will be going into this thoroughly in a moment, but I just want to give you my brief summary of what we are all doing here. And I apologize if anyone was here at the last time. I did not write a new speech, so you're going to hear the same thing. This hearing is where we solicit comments from you, the public, about what issues and concerns should be addressed in the draft environmental impact statement, or DEIS, for the proposed project. The Pine Plains Planning Board is conducting these scoping sessions as the lead agency for the project. Most of the property is in Pine Plains, but there is a significant amount of the project in the town of Milan. As the lead agency, we are also responsible for evaluating the Milan parts of the plan. Note that both sessions are being videotaped and transcribed by a stenographer. The recording will be available on the board's YouTube page as soon as possible. The board's pages can be found by searching for Pine Plains Planning and Zoning Boards on YouTube and Facebook. By the way, if anyone wants to subscribe to our YouTube channel, it would help us out. We're trying to get a custom URL, and so if you do watch the videos, it'll help us if we get subscribers up. And you'll also be notified if any of our videos get posted. We'll also link to the videos on the town website. The transcript will be shared on the town website as well as posted to the board's Dropbox. We will post when ready. We will post all public materials related to the applications there. Additionally, minutes and other public materials are posted on the town website. Before I turn over to the planners, I just wanted to say something, and if you've watched our meetings, or if you watched the last meeting, you definitely heard this. Local government has the most direct effect on our lives and is the place where citizens can have the most effect directly on policy that matters to their own lives and their families' lives and those of the community. It is how we set up the framework for all of us to live and work with each other, and Pine Plains is a small place where there is no hiding from each other. We all have to have some understanding to get along with each other the best we can. Additionally, I just want to reiterate that this board will always consider and handle any application before us the same, regardless of who the applicant or concerned citizen or party is. Whether that applicant is a homeowner, a business owner, or a corporation, they are all members of our community and will be treated fairly and accurately. We will discharge our duties according to the regulations and statutes of the town and state that pertain to our proceedings to the best of our abilities, professionally and without prejudice. This board takes on a tremendous amount of work on a voluntary basis. The members go through a lot of training and reading in order to tackle what are invariably lots of technical and intricate zoning and legal issues. I applaud and appreciate their willingness to generously donate their time and effort to what can be somewhat of a thankless job. And I would say to the public here tonight that there are many boards and committees in the town where the town can always use help of motivated, thoughtful individuals who want to step up and help out and contribute to making Pine Plains a great place to live. And with that, I would like to introduce Frank Fish from BFJ.
Good morning, everyone. As Mike said, I'm Frank Fish. BFJ Planning is the planning firm that's assisting the town in reviewing the applicant's application and the scoping document. So I'm going to speak on behalf of the planning board. My role is to just say what is scoping so everyone kind of has a brief understanding of it. If those of you who were at the first scoping session, Sarah Yackel from our office was here and provided the same role. So, by the way, scoping is, I view it as, and Seeker views it, the Seeker regulations actually say scoping is the table of contents of the environmental impact statement. So today, the last scoping meeting, today's meeting, and the next 10 days or so, if anyone wants to make written comments, it's to comment on what do you think is important to be in the scope. And Seeker says, I'm sorry, Seeker is the State Environmental Quality Review Act, and the legislation says it's not only what should be in the scope, but what should not be in the scope. So it's the table of contents about the scope for the EIS. And at the end, that's kind of important. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone, if you didn't get it, the entire scope was available outside. And we did a sort of brief 2-page summary of the scope and tries to explain what scoping is. But it comes down to that, where it's about the table of contents of the EIS, what should go in it and what should not go in it. Usually most people are focused on what should go in it, what do you want in it. But I want to explain that sometimes there are things that don't need to go in an EIS. For instance, when we did the EIS many years ago, I'm going to date myself, for the Performing Arts Center at Bard College, it became clear in the scoping what was important to people. The visual impacts of where that Performing Arts Center was going to go. Traffic was important to people, but certain things were not important to people, and they didn't get in the EIS. One of them was air quality, as opposed to noise. Noise was very important. Air quality was not important to people. When in Bard College, Seeker worked pretty well, I feel. It had some changes that happened to the project. And I want to just, the second page of this handout that I hope you all got, it's just a 2-pager that explains scoping. The second page of it is just a Seeker timeframes. And this is right from the state. It's not, we didn't do this graphic. The state of New York's DEC did this graphic. And so I just want to be very brief about it, but in yellow on it is where we are now. And scoping is the first public part of the EIS. In other words, the planning board here is already the lead agency. In other words, they are the agency with the responsibility to manage the EIS and to review it. And so scoping is the first part. And it's natural, it should be the first part because it's the table of contents, what goes in the scope. But the second part will be the big part and all the work. And that will be done largely by the applicant, and the applicant will speak next. And that is the EIS itself. But when the EIS is done, the planning board will come back, and you can see this when you get a chance to look at this time frame. Planning board will come back, and the planning board will look at it and examine it for completeness. And does it comply with the scope? So that's why this meeting and any comments you make in the next 10 days they're important, because Seeker says, the state law says, hey, the planning board's got an obligation to look at the DEIS when it's finished and say, does it comply with the scope? So what's in the scope is kind of important as a guide. Then there's a public hearing. By the way, the public hearing is not mandatory, but I won't speak for the board, but I think the chances are pretty good there will be a public hearing on this. And then you'll have a chance to comment at the public hearing more on the DEIS, what you think, and what would then go into, and all your comments need to be answered at the public hearing in what's called the final environmental impact statement. And then after the final environmental impact statement is done, it gets circulated to everyone again, it's publicly available, and the planning board ends the process of the State Environmental Quality Review Act with what's called seeker findings. And the key to this is no agency can take any action at all in terms of land use approvals until they make the seeker findings. And that's going to be, I don't know, because we don't know how long it will take to do the EIS or the FEIS, but I would hazard a guess that it would be sometime in 2022 or 2023. So that's the seeker process, and today's the beginning of that process with scoping. And just a word on the scope, it's just so you have the scope, but as you go through it, it really starts on the third page of the scope, if you have the scope with you. And what the scope, really it only has about a normal EIS, I mean, it depends on the way different applicants do it. In this case, I think the applicant has 9 chapters. Some of them have, 6 or 7 chapters. But the key is the first chapter is an executive summary. State law kind of suggests that. Second chapter is what is the proposal? What is it? And again, the next speaker here, Stuart, will explain the proposal. The third chapter is the meat of the document in terms of understanding what's being proposed. It's chapter 3, which is, it goes through existing conditions, and then what's the project's impact on those conditions? And if that's impact serious and negative, then how's it mitigated? So that third chapter, it starts with land use. It starts with, I think, A is land use and zoning, and it ends up, I think, probably with, I'm not sure, N or Q, but it goes through most of the alphabet with different subsections. For instance, natural features, transportation, air quality, noise. It goes through all of those standard issues. And it goes through each one with, here's the existing condition, here's the impact, and here's the mitigation. So as you look at it and you feel, hey, if something's not covered or you want it covered in greater detail, I would say that's the purpose of scoping. If you spot something, it's not that important. Many people don't focus on that, but we're supposed to focus on that too. What doesn't go into it? For instance, I used the Bard College as an example. And then finally, there's alternatives. And the alternatives are very important. Someone asked me earlier, you'll see in the alternative section, there's a section on if there's a resort component to this proposal. There's an alternative that says what the resort could be under existing zoning, namely no more than 12,000 square feet. However, if there's a larger size, that will be compared against the resort that's allowed under existing zoning, which is a 12,000 square foot facility. By the way, that's not a large facility because I'm used to some homes, not the normal home, but I'm used to some homes in places like Southampton where we're working at 12,000 square feet. Gee, they say that's the average size of a home out here. So not here, but so anyway, it gives you a sense of that resort size is fairly controlled here in Pine Plains. So, but there'll be alternatives to that. So the alternative section is very important section also in the EIS. And then after that, there's some chapters you'll see in the EIS. They're simply required by state law and impacts on things like growth, cumulative impacts, energy, and then the one I love most is I think it's irreversible and irretrievable impact on resources. I've never fully quite found that to be the most important one of scoping, but it's there and they have to cover it. So that's basically scoping and what it is, and the key is to hear from you. So you also should have gotten a copy of this, but the next speaker will explain from the applicant's perspective what the project is so everyone understands it. So thank you, and Stuart.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Frank. My name is Stuart Messinger. I'm a planner with the Chazen Companies. I wanted to just start out by thanking all of y'all for coming out on a beautiful Saturday morning to learn about the project. Pretty encouraging turnout, I think. I want to thank the Planning Board for hosting the session, and I especially want to thank the school district. The school has been incredibly helpful to us in terms of logistics, setting things up, taking things down, and adjusting on the fly a little bit as we had to in our first meeting. So great big thanks to the school staff. One other quick set of introductions here for the project team. Justin Louie, who's the project manager with the Durst organization, Catherine Mannion, who is the project manager for us at Chazen, and Jennifer Van Tile with Cuddy Fetter, who's the project attorney. So the main point of this meeting is to hear your comments on the scoping document. I'm going to briefly give you an overview of the project. If you haven't picked up the scoping document, it's on the table out front. And since that's what we're talking about today, take it home, study it. We'll go over the comment process again at the conclusion of the meeting. So the project site is 3,100 acres. It's located in the towns of Pine Plains and Milan. This is the town line between Pine Plains and Milan. We have 2,655 acres, 2,655 in Pine Plains. We have 445 in Milan. The site is bisected by Route 199 and by the Taconic State Parkway here. Internal roads include Woodard Hill Road, which changes to Ferris Lane at the town line. We have Hicks Hill Road. We have Mount Ross Road. We have Stissing Mountain Road, and we have Sherwood Drive. Sherwood Road, sorry. The main access to the property would be via Route 199. This intersection here with Woodard Hill Road would be rebuilt to be safe and provide good sight distances, and we'd also provide a secondary access on Route 99 at this location here. There'd be internal roads connecting the Milan and Pine Plains portions of the project site. And just give you a brief history. I talked to a lot of folks in the hall last session, this session, and most of you are aware of this history, but I think it's worth going into because it contrasts the density in this development plan from some of the prior plans. So the original plan for this project was Mr. Tom Carvel's Sports City Estates in the 1960s. The plan at that time was for several thousand lots, a ski hill, an 18-hole golf course, and some other recreational amenities. The first phase of the project, consisting of 200 single-family units, was subdivided around Lake Carvel, but as I think everybody knows, only a very few of them were actually built. There was water and sewer infrastructure installed to serve the homes that were built and the homes that were not built, and the 18-hole golf course that up until recently operated was constructed. Mr. Carvel's estate sold the property to the present owner in 2001, and the Durst organization subsequently acquired some additional land. 2004, an application was made for 1,022 units, most of them in Pine Plains, some of them in Milan, on what was then 1,700 acres, and that works out to a density of about 1.86 acres per unit. That project proceeded to an environmental impact statement, but it wasn't completed. The town put a moratorium and adopted new zoning. In 2011, the applicant advanced an application under the new zoning called a New Neighborhood Development, an NND. That application was for 648 units. 591 were in Pine Plains. The remainder were in Milan. And that was on about 1,900 acres, and the density of that project was 3.27 acres per unit. That application was formally withdrawn in April of last year, and then the applicant has been working on the current plan, which we'll talk about now. So the current plan is an as-of-right plan. It complies with the residential zoning in both towns. it uses the clustering provisions in both towns to preserve open space. The amount of open space that's preserved in this plan exceeds the requirements in both towns for a conservation or clustered development. The two towns use different terms for pretty much the same thing. So the current plan is for 223 units in Pine Plains, 51 in Milan. That's a total of 274, and the density is right around 11 acres per unit. And there's just under 60% open space across the project in the two towns, and again, that exceeds the open space requirements. The idea is to develop a cohesive layout between the two towns so you don't see any difference when you're traveling between Milan and Pine Plains. It all appears as one development. The new road connections that we're proposing help to do that. At the same time, most of the development is clustered around Lake Carvel, and so is unlikely to be visible from Route 199 and the Taconic, but of course we'll have to study that as part of the DEIS. Most of the development is focused on previously disturbed areas of the site, that is, the area that has been subdivided and somewhat developed around Lake Carvel. There's a 9-hole golf course proposed pretty much in the footprint of 9 holes of the prior golf course. So we tried to concentrate development in previously disturbed areas, limit it from views of surrounding roads. The average lot size in the core area is around 1/4 acre to 3.5 acres. The project is entirely single-family housing, which is consistent with the zoning in both towns. And as I mentioned, it conforms to zoning, and so it's what we call an as-of-right development. The plan includes amenities for the homeowners, a clubhouse that would be located here near the lake, the 9-hole golf course I've mentioned, and I was asked out in the hallway about how would common land and facilities be owned and operated, and that's a subject of study in the EIS. I think when you look at the scoping document, you'll see a section there for us to discuss that. They're a little hard to see on your small plan, but on the big plan out in the hallway, you can see a really robust network of trails throughout the property. Our intent is that some of those trails would be open to the public. We'd want to study that in the EIS. Most of the development is focused away from the Hambrook watershed, substantial amount of green space around there. The development respects buffers. It limits road crossings of wetlands. And we think one of the best things about this plan is it provides for a lot of connected open space. And when I say connected, I mean that it connects things like the Roloff Jansen's multiple use area, the Lafayetteville multiple use area, with some of the lands around Stissing Pond, Stissing Mountain Preserve, this land here that's Dutchess Conservancy. All of this green is open space. As I said, it's just under 60%, and it follows, in many cases, the wetlands and the water corridors. So it connects up open space, and we would expect that the trail network would take advantage of that as well. Turning to utilities, water for most lots would be supplied by a new central water system. There's a number of wells on the property that were tested extensively in the prior applications, and they provide more than enough water to serve the project. But what we would do is install all new infrastructure, conveyance, distribution, treatment, and firefighting infrastructure. The existing lots that would remain in the Sports City subdivision would be offered the opportunity to connect to the new infrastructure. Similarly, wastewater would be disposed of in a new wastewater treatment plant. There's an existing plant that services the lots in the Sports City subdivision. That plant would be decommissioned, and again, all new wastewater infrastructure would be constructed. We're still looking at the best location for that, and that's again something that will be just talked about in the DEIS. There's a number of ways that water and wastewater systems can be managed. There can be private transportation corporations, town special districts. They could be operated by the county or as a part county district by the Dutchess County Water and Wastewater Authority, and so we'll need to look at all of those options in the DEIS. There's 39 larger lots. These are the lots that are away from the core around the lake. They're all over 5 acres. Some of them are quite large. They would all be serviced with private water and sewer systems, essentially a well and a septic system. One of the things that we've been asked about is whether the infrastructure is likely to spur additional growth, and the idea is that it's going to be sized to accommodate the project and not be built so that there could be future development tied to the infrastructure that would be built. So just a few other things that are relevant. One is that the existing Lake Carvel Dam is a substandard dam. It doesn't meet the state's classification. It doesn't meet the state's standards for safety. And so that dam would be rebuilt, and it would be relocated a little bit to the north, thus expanding the size of Lake Carvel. Some of the existing roads in the site are substandard. They'd be reconstructed to present town standards. I mentioned the rebuild of the Woodard Hill Road and Route 199 intersection. We're proposing a deceleration lane northbound on the Taconic to get into Ferris. I mentioned the interior road connections between Pine Plains and Milan. There'd be new roads in the project to service the development. We would apply to the town board for what's called an open development area, which would allow us to set standards for those roads. The idea is that they'd be private roads and they'd be built to a rural road standard in keeping with the ambiance of the development. So then the last thing, and Frank touched on it, was alternatives. DEISs can consider alternative project elements, scales, and scopes. And so the draft scope that we've submitted to the town includes a resort as part of the project. The DEIS will evaluate alternative sizes and scales of the resort and also alternative locations. And it's worth noting that any lands that might be allocated to a resort would then be subtracted from the total lands for the purposes of the residential density count. So if we ended up with a resort and we applied some acreage to that, then that's going to make us lose some residences in the overall count. So we're looking forward to your comments about any aspect of the project. We had some interesting comments at the last meeting. The comments, again, are really should relate to the nature and type of analyses that we ought to be doing in the DEIS, but any other comment you want to make is obviously of interest. The comment deadline is August the 10th. There is a sheet out front with the address and email for additional written comments if you don't feel like speaking tonight or you think of other things. So thanks for coming out. Look forward to hearing from you. If you want a pointer, it's right up here on the podium. So thanks.
Kelly, Frank, can you get the paper from Kelly, please? Okay. Okay, so we have a nice list of people looking to speak. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Stuart. We're almost ready to get to the public comments. I just want to go over a few procedural items to lay the ground rules for this process. As Frank noted, this is not a question and answer session with the board or the applicant, but it is your opportunity to note any issues that you believe should be added to the draft scope to be included in the DEIS. The board will consider all the comments received tonight and over the next few days or weeks, I guess, the next couple of weeks through August 10th, and consider them as we look to issue a final scope. I'm going to be calling the speakers in order of which they signed up. I'm going to set the time. Oh, actually, first, obviously, you can still sign up as we're going on here. If you think you want to say something, go out to Tricia in the hallway and sign up. Also, if you finish speaking and you still have more to say, you can ask to sign up on the second turn list out there with Tricia. And at the end of this, if people have more to say, we'll have a second comment time. let's see here. Each person is signed up will have 5 minutes to speak. The reason we put a time limit on it so everyone can, as many people as possible can speak and everyone can get in what they need to say. We value your opinions and we want to give everyone the opportunity to express their comments and suggestions. I also want to be as fair as possible and not allow some people to speak longer, so I definitely will be gaveling you down if you get to the time limit. I will give a 60-second warning. I'll try to remember. I'll just probably tap on the microphone, and that'll give you a warning that you have 60 seconds to wrap up. Please keep a close eye on the time. You want to be able to get all your important comments in before your time is up. Also, you can't grant your time to someone else or anything like that. It's your 5 minutes. If you don't use the whole time, then the next person's time starts. You also may want to submit written comments, as I stated before. You can hand them in to Tricia today, or get them in by email or mail by August 10th at 4 p.m. Over that. I don't think we have to do the on-deck chair. We don't have that many speaking. All right, so can I have the first speaker up is Dr. Handler from the school district.
Thank you very much. My name's Martin Handler, and I am a resident of the town of Pine Plains. In addition, for the past 8 years, I've been the superintendent of schools for Pine Plains. And as, first of all, from a personal perspective, I will go on record as saying I strongly support this project as an economic development engine that I believe will benefit all of the residents in the town. But apart from that, I'd like to share some facts as it relates to the school district. And looking through this scoping document, there is a section on impacts to the school system. And I believe all of the proposed project lies within the Pine Plains Central School District. We cover 30 square miles, and not part or all of 9 towns. So we're pretty widespread. I will just say that this is not a school district endorsement of the project. I don't have the authority to do that, but I can share some facts with you. We have a very good school district, I believe. I'd like to think over the past 8 years we've managed to maintain and maybe improve upon that. We were the first ones in the county to offer full-day pre-kindergarten. We have a computer device in the hands of every youngster. That was actually pre-pandemic. We were a little ahead of the curve. And we had some preeminent programs. The one thing that we don't have are students. The enrollment in the school district, and I'm looking at 20 years, has declined from a high in 95-96 of 1,539 kids to last year 872 kids, which included 40 pre-kindergarten kids. So really it was 832 K through 12. Point that I'm making is we have a lot of capacity. We have 3 buildings. As pertains to the scoping document, we would not require any additional building or expansion of facilities. Have to hire a few more teachers, perhaps, if we had youngsters either as a direct result of the project, the residences, or an indirect result of the commercial development that might be engendered. Why do we want more kids? Support our program. The precipitous decline in enrollment has caused us to shrink back some of the things we're able to do. We only offer one foreign language now. That's unfortunate. Our electives struggle to have enough youngsters to sustain those programs. And our sports program, for example, we've lost a number of sports and a number that we've actually gone out and merged with neighboring school districts to be able to sustain. So basically, in conclusion, I would just make the point that I see only a positive impact of the development, economic development that would take place as a result of this project relative to our school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hannon. Next up, we have Dara Cloud.
Hi, everybody. I'm town supervisor here, and I have lived in either Stanfordville or Pine Plains for 24 years. I've owned businesses in both places and sent my kids to school here. And I imagine that we are not the first small rural town to be facing a large development. And to me, sustainability doesn't only pertain to the physical, natural environment, but also in terms of the character of the town. We have a beautiful, comprehensive plan that was handwritten by our citizens and which we recently updated to retain its core principle, the preservation of the rural small-town character of Pine Plains. So what I would like to ask for is a study, which I'm imagining might already exist somewhere for another town or many towns. Think tanks might have done this, in terms of the sustainability of our rural character. How do we keep being a small place with a lot of freedoms? How do we prepare for the impact of so many people coming in? And in that, could there be a guide to us so that we can go forward beginning soon to prepare for something like this and keep our small rural character? Thank you.
Thank you, Dara. Okay, next up, we have Sarah Jones.
Good morning. I'm a resident of Pine Plains and have been for a long time, and I'm also a member of the town board. I would ask for several inclusions into the scoping document. First of all, I would ask that the Duchess Land Conservancy be added as an interested agency. Then under Section N, existing conditions, potential impacts, and proposed mitigation, there's a stated assumption that all residential uses will be occupied year-round rather than part-time or seasonally. I would ask that this should be expanded to include review of both part-time, i.e. weekend use, and seasonal use. Pine Plains has successfully qualified as a clean energy community. That's under the New York State Energy Research and Development Agency, or NYSERDA. So we as a community have demonstrated an interest in improving our clean air, our clean energy status. New York State currently has a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the state to 40% of the 1990 levels by 2030 and to 85% of the 1990 levels by the year 2050. The Durst organization has in the past demonstrated its commitment to building sustainable, energy-efficient buildings. With this project in a non-urban area, the Durst organization will hopefully continue that commitment. It should ultimately serve as an outstanding example of the latest innovative thinking on environmentally sustainable rural development. Therefore, it is my suggestion that the section of the scoping document on greenhouse gas emissions, which is subsection Q, be expanded. It should include, first, an analysis of greenhouse gas emissions resulting from the construction phase of the project, including the manufacture and transportation of construction materials to the site. Secondly, a discussion of greenhouse gas emissions, direct and indirect, during the project's operation. Thirdly, an assessment of the loss of CO2 sequestration capacity due to any loss of forested areas. And fourth, a discussion of mitigation measures that could be undertaken to reduce the greenhouse gas impact of the project, both during the construction phase and afterwards during the operation of the completed project. In this era of serious climate change and the destruction that we can see occurring on an almost daily basis, it is essential that we evaluate the relevant impacts of a construction project of this scope and scale of the current one. If we do that, then the outcome can be positive for all of us on this planet, and it can serve as an example to others. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next, we have Jane Waters.
Hi, I'm Jane Waters. I've been a part-time resident of Pine Plains for about 25 years and a full-time resident for another 25 years. I made some comments at the previous session, and today I'm going to speak about different issues, one of which is the invasive species that are on the property now and that attention needs to be paid to in terms of the possible damage they can cause to the environment if they're allowed to continue on the property. Specifically, the growth of Ailanthus altissima, which is tree of heaven. They're on Lake Road, I think. Oops, nope. I've never used one of these things, so. It's on already? Okay. Yeah. Now my tremor is causing a bit of a problem. Sorry, guys. On Lake Road, there's that gray triangular property. I think that's the property that was owned by a member of the Adams family, if I'm correct. Anyway, at the bottom of that, and it may either be on the Durst property or on the Gray property, there's a stand, a rather large stand of Ailanthus that has been growing for about the last 4 years. It's now got lots of seed pods on it, And if those are allowed to scatter their seeds, you're going to have a spread. This very fast-growing tree, and it's the main host of spotted lanternfly, which can be damaging to the forest surrounding it. They suck the lives out of fruit trees, oak trees, maple trees. And there are other stands growing of ailanthus along 199, right by the road, where trees have been cut to increase, I think, the ability to see what's right next to the road so deer don't jump out. But anyway, there's, and I'm sure there's spots where ailanthus is growing in other areas, but, and also, you've recently done a lot of cutting of the Russian olive and autumn olive on the property and honeysuckle that were growing in some of the old fields, which I think is terrific. And if you want to have more ground nesting birds, it would be helpful to keep those fields mowed, but mow only in the late summer, because if you mow earlier, the nests will be disturbed and the young birds will be killed. So that's my comment about that. At the last meeting, somebody brought up Trout Unlimited and whether they would be interested in some in stating whether the dam that's on the property that's at the intersection of Mount Ross Road and 199 should be taken down. I know that Trout Unlimited, I was a member of the steering committee of Pine Plains United, which is no longer in operation, but during the last application, we met with the local chapter, members of the local chapters, a couple of us met with them, of Trout Unlimited. There's one chapter that's called the Rojan chapter, and there's one in Dutchess County. They were interested in being involved and making recommendations. So I just wanted to let you know that. That's it.
Thank you, Jane. Next up is Greg Salisbury.
Hi, my name is Greg Salisbury. I live on Jackson Corners Road. And a number of us, well, I guess I'm going to just start with what I have written down so I don't get too confused. I don't know if it was said who decides what goes into the scoping plan, or I missed that part. Maybe that should be clarified at somewhere. And then who exactly it's submitted to, if it's just the planning board, and if it needs to answer certain questions decided by the state or who. It wasn't clear to me. I wanted to, well, some of the things have been said, pick up, I guess, on what Sarah mentioned. I'm concerned too, CO2 emissions from construction of new homes. I had kind of did a little math myself, figuring it's going to be between 20 and 30,000 tons of CO2 emissions from constructing that many homes. We just kind of went through a period of 3 weeks of rain that was, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's
Is that better? Okay, sorry. So I think whatever.
yeah, lean towards it.
Lean towards it. Okay, whatever plans are in place for dealing with rainwater or storm runoff, kind of need to consider that it's going to be probably significantly more in the next 5-10 years. Let's see, how does this work? Okay, so and then another big concern. I do some sampling with the Rolf Jansen Watershed Community. It's a nonprofit, and we do sampling starting up in Hillsdale. We come all the way to the Hudson River, and we're really kind of concerned about all these homes. How close are they to the ridge line? Looking into the zoning laws, it looks like Pine Plains has laws that require preserving the ridge lines. Dutchess County Legislature Master Plan also noted this area right here to be a special area, and Sarah also mentioned bringing Dutchess County Land Conservancy into the fold, because they are the ones who've noted that this is a scenic area and it has importance for its open space, how you can see it from this area here. So there's a bunch of neighbors on this road, on Jackson Corners Road, also known as County Route 2, are quite concerned about, are we going to be able to see these homes or not? Are they going to be far enough back from the ridge line as seemed to be required? And then will there be, possible runoff issues from these homes or the construction of the roads, and also as well as the golf course that could affect the Roloff Jansen. Also concerned about sound. Is there going to be sound pollution coming from the building of these homes? Any sort of noise in this valley? There's steep hills on this side and up here. So any sort of dog barking or firecrackers, we tend to all hear it. So if there's going to be sound of nail guns or saws going for the next 5-10 years, we're not happy about that. So we're getting together a letter that we're going to submit in writing as well, a number of residents in that area. And then traffic, driving the Taconic Parkway, everyone knows Columbia County has doubled in size in the last year, and driving on the Taconic Parkway is often not at all the same experience as it was just a few years ago. I don't know how detailed the traffic impact studies have been.
60 seconds.
Thank you. I expect that it's going to be somewhat similar. And I would also, with all due respect to Mr. Handler, I don't believe that a lot of these homes are going to end up being as primary residences of people. And my guess is that they will end up being secondary residences for most, or people who have a lot of funds who aren't going to be sending their kids to Pine Plains School. That's just my opinion. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Susan Hecht.
Please let me know if you can't hear me through the mask, because I can take it off.
Just bring the mic down some more, maybe, Director. Yeah.
How's that sound?
Good.
Is that better?
Yes.
All right. I want to start just by thanking the board and the applicant and the process for giving us this opportunity to be a part of this. I ask that the impact statement address that the town of Pine Plains, as it exists now, is open to everyone, the businesses, the public recreation areas, including, for example, the beach and the trails. I ask that the scope include a consideration that a project of this size, with its own commercial space, maybe, I don't know what's planned, but maybe a restaurant or two, perhaps a market, a clubhouse, maybe a spa, and maybe recreation facilities. Even someone had mentioned last week, maybe something at Stissing Lake or near Stissing Lake, which could be restricted for use only by the members, and that it would be closed to everyone else, is not within the character of our town. I know Mr. Messinger commented on this network of trails and that they can connect different open areas now, the multiple use areas in different areas, but would those even be available to us, to people who are not members? And I'm using members, which is probably not the right word, but property owners, or however you want to define that. We currently in Pine Plains have a warm and open welcome. To the extent that the project would not be open for public use, could create an inequity that doesn't currently exist here, and it can create irreparable damage to the character and the well-being of the people in Pine Plains. And I ask that the scope consider that. Second, I ask that the scope include what is the overall return to Pine Plains in exchange for the requirements that the project will put on the Pine Plains resources. There is some expectation that the project will bring increased tax revenue for the town, but how will this measure against the costs on the town that the project will demand? For example, just as one example, the fire department that we have is a volunteer fire department, and it has the vehicles and the equipment that we currently need, and there's a lot of effort that goes into getting new equipment when we need it. So would this project create new needs, and would our volunteers or would the town be able to meet those needs? In addition, is it possible that we will find that there may be opportunities for the, again, I use the word members, for the developer and the members, to reduce the tax burdens that we're hoping to enjoy, and thereby would we actually receive the tax revenues that we're expecting, however those are being measured? Third, I ask for a consideration to be made about the current Silo Ridge development in Armenia. This project may be different to the Silo Ridge development, but it's possible that in many ways the two are similar. I ask that the impact of Silo Ridge in that town be considered, and also to keep in mind that this project geographically is much larger than the Silo Ridge project. Fourth, I see a mention in the scoping document, the outline, about integrated pest management, but I don't see any mention about possible organic methods that can be used in exchange for the IPM. Fifth, there is hope for increased business opportunities for our local contractors, plumbers, electricians, and the like. But is it possible that a project of this size will end up being too big to utilize our local small businesses in the construction and the maintenance? And will we find that the applicant will have to reach beyond our local businesses, thereby not benefiting Pine Plains as we are hoping? One more.
Oh, yeah.
And sixth, as for the open spaces, I understand that the open space includes both cleared and uncleared, or grass and forest areas. And I'm asking to consider whether there would be some limitation on how much logging and deforestation would take place. That was
That's
it.
it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Again, you could sign up if you want more to say for a second go, if you wish. Brett Gold?
Good morning.
Morning.
All of my questions and concerns were asked already today, except for one. And the intersection of Mount Ross Road and 199 as being one of the major entrances to this project seems to me to be a terrible idea. One, there is a very wicked turn there. I myself have missed my own turn at night. There are no lights there. I imagine lights would be put up if it was going to be a major turn, but that turn cannot handle the amount of traffic that's going to be from this project. My other concern was living on Mount Ross Road. The traffic is bad as it is now because it's a north-south road, and I can only imagine the traffic that's going to be there. So I don't know if there has been a study of that one road. I don't want to be selfish and just talk about the road that I live on, but it seems to be a major part of the project. That the other issue on that road is the trash. I walk up and down Mount Ross Road. Some people might have seen me picking up a lot of cans. It's very disturbing that 99% of them are beer cans that have been drinking in cars. So I'm very concerned about that, and I think that that should be studied. It can only increase with more traffic. And then the only thing that I didn't hear mentioned last week or today was the increase of residents in Pine Plains and Dutchess County due to COVID, and if that has been tweaked into the study of everything that the Durst organization is going to do, because there are more people up here now than ever, and this plan was obviously in place way before COVID. Those are my concerns.
Thank you. Maureen O'Toole.
Hello. Maureen O'Toole. I have only lived in Pine Plains 6 months, so I'm the new one. But one of the reasons that I moved here is what Derek Cloud went over, which is the small town environment. And it's been a super friendly environment for us the last 6 months. Downtown Pine Plains, and I apologize, I've only seen the study this morning. There's a lot about traffic, and I see a lot about traffic in the development area itself. I would like to see more study on traffic in the village of Pine Plains, and by that I mean sort of from Stissing Center to Factory Lane. There are many families with small children and pets that actually live on 199. And as we know, it's the major east-west corridor, and so there will of course be enhanced not just residential traffic, but truck traffic, et cetera, all the things we have. We right now have difficulty implementing the 35-mile-an-hour speed zone, and I would suggest that this will just compound that difficulty. So I don't know if it's addressed by more street lights or traffic lights or better policing, but it is a very residential downtown village area, and I just want to point that out and ask for more consideration in the village itself of the impact of traffic and speed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Kelly, do we have any more? As we've reached the end of our list, is there anyone else that would like to speak? Or if you've spoken already, want to speak again? Going once, going twice. Jane?
If I could just speak from where I am. Somebody asked that the Duchess Land Conservancy be added to the list of interested agencies. I would also recommend seeing Hudson if it isn't on the list be added. I know they've followed this for years now.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Last chance. All right. I want to thank everyone for coming down and participating. And as we've said multiple times, you get your written comments in. You have until August 10th to get those written comments in. And then we're going to, we as a board will be discussing and considering all the comments and working with the applicant to adjust the draft scope to become a final scope, and then it will eventually be voted on and adopted at that point. So that might answer your question, Mr. Salisbury. So that's how that works. All right, thank you very much, everyone. Everyone get out there and enjoy that beautiful day.
Have you ever eaten this? Have you ever eaten? Do you like oyster?